monitoring and how you can advocate for change. Since this is a small meeting, can everyone share in the chat their name and how they heard about this meeting? Today we're here for a very simple reason that we all deserve clean air. But right now, many communities in Washington, especially those that live near highways, factories, and industrial sites, are breathing in polluted air that puts their health at risk. Worse yet, this pollution isn't being properly measured, which means the problem is being ignored. And that's where community-based air quality monitoring comes in. And so by the end of this workshop, I hope that you'll take away how community-based air quality monitoring works, why it's necessary, and how you can push for action. So I'll be going over the agenda. First, we'll be discussing air pollution and health impacts and why it's a serious issue. Next, we'll be discussing community-based air quality monitoring, what it is and how it helps. And then we'll be then later on discussing the Department of Ecology's roles and what Washington is and isn't doing, the rulemaking process, and how policies are made and how we can influence them, and our call to action, which is hopefully you joining us for the Department of Ecology meeting happening this Thursday and how you can make a difference. This workshop is really information heavy. So like if you want to ask questions or like feel free to participate in a way that feels most comfortable to you. I hope that from this meeting, it isn't just like you're just taking away, just learning, but we can learn together how we can take action. So I'll be covering background information. So air pollution is not just an environmental issue. It is a public health crisis that affects our lungs, hearts, and lives, especially in overburdened communities. In areas like Duwamish Valley, Lake City, Yakima, and Mattawa, residents are exposed to higher levels of pollutants because those neighborhoods are near highways, industrial zones, and agricultural sites. A major concern is that air quality monitors are often far from where people actually live. And that means that official data that we sometimes rely on underestimates the real dangers of pollution in our communities. If we're not measuring air quality where it matters most, we cannot effectively protect our health. And that's why that's where community-based air quality monitoring ties into this. So, did you know that communities' colors often breathe in more pollution? With air pollution, it isn't just a public health crisis, it's an environmental justice issue. Your zip code should never determine whether you breathe clean air, but unfortunately it does. In communities of color, pollution levels are significantly higher than in white communities, regardless of income. And this disparity has contributed to a 40% increase in asthma-related deaths and higher rates of heart and lung disease. These figures aren't just random, but they reflect a longstanding pattern of environmental injustice where calls for pollution reduction are often ignored. So health impacts of air pollution. So far we've talked about where pollution is happening and who's most affected by, but let's talk about what this means for people's health. Children in racial and ethnic minority communities are more likely to develop asthma and other respiratory disease due to long-term exposures. PM2.5 is linked to higher rates of cardiovascular disease, lung disease, and premature death. And even short-term pollution can trigger asthma attacks, strokes, in hospitals. Taking this into a case by real life examples, imagine being a child with asthma living near a busy highway, or every time a truck drives by, your risk of asthma attack goes up. Imagine being an elderly person with heart disease, breathing in toxic air every single day. That's the reality for thousands of people in Washington. So before I move on to this next section, I know that I covered quite a bit of like information, and I do want to take this moment for people to ask their questions about what I just discussed. And yeah, we will have a Q&A at the end. But if people feel like they have some lingering questions now, they can ask. All right. So this is where with all these health problems and health problems that do arise from air pollution and the discrepancy in data, this is where the case for community-based air quality monitoring comes in. So a best example to describe this is like, imagine trying to fix a leak in your house, but instead of checking where the water is dripping from, you're looking at a meter in your neighbor's house. It sounds ridiculous, right? But that's exactly how her air monitoring system works. So let's take a closer look at a major problem in our air monitoring system. The federal network was designed to track broad regional air trends rather than pinpoint local pollution hotspots. This means that it often misses the finer details where pollution is actually the highest and who is most at risk. In fact, 1 in every 3 people in the United States live in an area without any air monitors at all, and this can create a significant regulatory gap. Without localized monitoring, overburdened communities often lack the accurate real-time pollution data that they need. And without the data, it's much harder to hold polluters accountable and to implement effective interventions. The gap in our monitoring infrastructure not only leaves critical health impacts unaddressed, but also undermines environmental justice. If we're not measuring the air where people actually live, we cannot know the true extent of pollution or push for necessary change. So if our current system isn't working, what is the solution? Community-based air quality monitoring is a very effective tool. First, these systems use low-cost portable sensors that can be placed right in the heart of our communities. This means that instead of relying solely on traditional monitors, which are fixed in place and designed to capture broad regional air quality trends, we get real-time data directly from the neighborhoods most affected by pollution. Traditional monitors are often installed in locations that do not capture the whole picture. They miss sudden pollution spikes from sources like trucks, nearby industrial sites, or busy highways. In contrast, community sensors are strategically positioned to catch these short-term variations and provide accurate on-the-ground readings. By tracking pollution at the neighborhood level, we gain a much clearer understanding of the air quality challenges we face. This precise, localized data allows government and local agencies to better target their pollution reduction efforts. It means that when measures are taken, whether it's implementing stricter controls on industrial emissions or managing traffic in congested areas, they're based on actual conditions that affect our lives. Some people might say, well, isn't this just an idea? Has it actually ever worked? The answer is it does work. Other states and cities have already proven that community-based air quality monitoring is really important for environmental justice. An example of this could be seen at the California AB 617 program, which used community-based air quality monitoring to enforce stricter pollution regulations in overburdened areas and lead to stronger emission controls on industrial polluters and targeted cleanup efforts where pollution is the worst, as well as the fact that the EPA back in 2020 awarded $53.4 million to expand community monitoring projects nationwide. And there are also other states that are also adopting community-based air quality monitoring as a tool for policy enforcement. So I'm going to take another quick break, a quick second to allow for some questions. Any thoughts or anything that you guys want to share before I move on to the next section? Um, Sorry, let me go back. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's any questions. So why this matters. So air pollution isn't something that we can always see, but it's always affecting us every day, especially in areas near factories, highways, and industrial zones. You might not notice, but tiny particles called PM2.5 are floating in the air, and these particles are so small that they can travel deep into your lungs and even enter your bloodstream. They can come from car exhaust, industrial emissions, and even wildfire smoke, and they can even pose a serious health risk to our health. As I described before, children, older adults, and people with pre-existing health conditions are the most vulnerable to PM2.5, as well as PM2.5 light exposure is linked to asthma and heart disease and premature death. Now that we understand why PM2.5 pollution is dangerous, let's look at real-world data collected in Washington. Through community-based air quality monitoring, DRCC has measured air pollution levels in the Duwamish Valley, and results do vary from different areas. Through community-based The PM2.5s in different neighborhoods have shown that there is pollution spikes that are above the health standards. And these spikes are not captured by traditional state monitoring, which tends to focus on broader regional air quality trends. And these discrepancies aren't just a number, but it's a public health issues. Residents in these areas are breathing in more pollutants than they should be, and this can lead to serious health problems like asthma, heart disease, and etc. To understand how bad these pollution levels are, let's compare them to the health standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency and the World Health Organization. The EPA standard is that no more than 9 micrograms per cubic meter of PM2.5 per year, while WHO standards, the World Health Organization, is even more stricter, no more than 5 micrograms per cubic meter per year. What DRCC found in the Duwamish Valley is that certain areas had higher than the standard, such as 14th Avenue in Cloverdale that had at 8 micrograms per cubic meter, which is 60% above the WHO standard. The library, which had a 7 micrograms per cubic meter, 40% above the WHO standard, and Concord Elementary and Mara Farm, which had 66 micrograms per cubic meter, which is 20% above the WHO standard. This means that many areas of the Duwamish Valley, people, especially children, are breathing in pollution levels that exceed what scientists consider safe. This isn't a small issue, but a major public health concern. So tying this all together into with the Department of Ecology's roles and current gaps. If we know pollution is harming community, why isn't Department of Ecology doing more to fix it? The department is responsible for protecting our air quality, yet its approach has significant gaps. First, the Department of Ecology relies on a network of regional monitors designed to track broad air trends rather than pinpoint local hotspots. That means that while these monitors are useful for capturing overall patterns, they can sometimes miss the higher pollution levels in neighborhoods located near highways, industrial areas, or other pollutions. As a result, the communities that are most affected are not getting the accurate data they need. For example, in the department, in the December—
real quick, could you make a quick pause? I just want to go to the previous slide just to explain it one more time. Sorry.
This one?
Yeah. Just to quickly explain that one, and I'll explain it in English and in Spanish in a second. But yeah, I did want to just shed some light on what all went in here. There's actually several members here in this group out of the 14 people that are present that have actually helped us place these air monitors. So several people are here. One of them is Manuel, Amanda, Gloria, Teresa también. They helped us decide where these air monitors should go. So I just want to uplift that and thank everyone for all their hard work and for them being here present as well. Again, as Sumayo mentioned, this is just kind of a taste of the air monitors that we have, the ones that we thought would be easiest to share right now. And I'll go one by one. But this one here, 14th and Cloverdale, again, and then there's the second one that's by the library in South Park, and then this third one that's by Concord Elementary, and then this fourth one by Mara Farm. We placed others, but we just wanted to show these right now. The one on 14th and Cloverdale, as Sumayo mentioned, has a average from May to October of 8 micrograms per cubic meter. And the libraries is a measurement of 7 micrograms per cubic meter. And this Concord one is 6, and Mara Farm is also 6. As Sumaya already mentioned, these are, I guess, by EPA standards, they're okay. They're like under the limit. But if we look at the WHO, who has a little bit better, and in reality, better standards, they're kind of above all the time. So it hasn't been a year of data, but from those 6 months of data from May to November, they've been higher than the WHO standard. Again, EPA, the standard is higher, but the WHO standard, I think, demonstrates that there is some attention that we should definitely give to this air monitors that we've deployed. So yeah, I just want to give a brief shout out to every member that's present and everyone that's made it possible to have these here. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna quickly, I know I'm gonna might take a little bit more of your time, but say this in Spanish too for those that are present. So hasta ahora tenemos varios miembros de nuestro equipo de CAT están presentes ahorita. Amanda, Gloria, Manuel han estado presentes y han ayudado a seleccionar dónde es que debemos de poner estos monitores en South Park. Aquí solamente tenemos una sección, una que está en la 14 Cloverdale, otra que está en la biblioteca, otra que está en Concord Elementary, Mara Farm. Hasta ahora, gracias a los esfuerzos de este equipo, del CAT, hemos podido poner y identificar dónde es que queremos ponerlos y dónde los hemos puesto. No son todos, solamente hemos seleccionado estos para esta reunión. Y además de eso, aquí Sumaya habla acerca de los niveles de contaminación y los estándares que tiene la OMS, que es the World Health Organization, y la EPA. La EPA tiene regulaciones más altas, o sea, dice, ellos permiten 9 microgramos por metro cúbico, o sea, número 9. La OMS permite 5, no recomienda más de 5. O sea, la EPA es de los Estados Unidos, la OMS es una organización mundial. Digamos que tiene como que más importancia la salud porque tiene estos niveles más, dice 5 microgramos por metros cúbicos. De acuerdo a la OMS o the World Health Organization, todos nuestros monitores están arriba. Desde mayo hasta noviembre, esos 6 meses, han estado arriba de ese estándar que ellos tienen. Con la EPA, no. O sea, estamos bien, o sea, no estamos mal, pero por eso creo que es algo que tenemos que darle atención. Yeah, so feel free to continue, Samaya, but I think Mia has a question.
There was just a question in the chat that I was hoping you could answer for folks. Ashley asked what kind of monitors we use and what we monitor for.
Yeah, la pregunta es qué tipos de monitores usamos y qué monitoreamos. Monitoreamos PM2.5 y usamos un modelo que se llama Clarity. So, la compañía se llama Clarity Air Monitors. So we monitor for PM 2.5. We use this company, they're called Clarity Air Monitors. So we measure other things too, but we really only looked at the PM 2.5 data. Monitoreamos otras cosas, pero en sí solamente hemos mirado el PM 2.5. Okay. Any other questions at all about this? Preguntas. Además de lo que se han hecho. Oh, the question is, what else is monitored? Otra pregunta, ¿qué más se monitorea además de PM2.5? So, también se monitorea PM10, que son partículas también pequeñas, pero más grandes que el PM2.5. So, imagínense una partícula así de PM2.5, partícula de PM10 es más grande, como casi algo. Imagínense. So again, we measure PM 2.5, also PM10. PM10 is also very small, but bigger than PM 2.5, essentially. So imagine PM 2.5 being like the size of my fist, obviously much smaller, but like PM10 is like bigger, like, yeah, 4 times bigger, essentially. 4 veces, el PM10, 4 veces más grande. Otra cosa que monitoreamos es el nitrógeno, el NO2, que es una molécula que cambia bastante y también es dañina. No es nitrógeno puro, es NO2, que es nitrógeno de óxido, o óxido de nitrógeno. So we also measure nitrogen oxide, or NOx, I guess. Not just regular nitrogen, which is abundantly in there, but nitrogen oxides. And these interact with different things in our community, essentially, in our ambient air with other things. Yeah.
Thank you. And also to add to what Joseph was saying about those who are part of the project, I also want to thank you guys. My capstone, my project wouldn't exist without the work that you guys done as well. So thank you for that. And so I will go back to discussing the part back to Department of Ecology's role, just about more about their gaps and gap role and current gaps. They had a 2023 ecology report, and some of the data that was collected was using more regional air monitors, but however, they have not relied more on community-based air quality monitoring, and because of that, it can lead to an underestimation of actual exposure levels. Moreover, although there is a $10 million community grant, it does not fund community-based air monitoring, and without support for local initiatives, grassroots organizations are left without the tools to collect real-time on-the-ground data, and the lack of localized information means that critical pollution spikes and patterns remain undocumented, which makes it in turn harder to hold polluters accountable and implement targeted interventions. So Department of Ecology, and I'll touch on this a little bit. We have an expert, Mia, who will talk more in depth about this. But just a quick brief discussion. So like the Department of Ecology are looking to make some changes. They have a new rule, which is called Chapter 173. 173.448 WAC, which is an air quality in overburdened communities, and their goal is to reduce air pollution in highly impacted and overburdened communities. And I will be switching over to Mia, who will be discussing this more.
Thank you, Samayo. I'm going to share my screen, so let me know when you can see it. Can everyone see it okay?
We can see it. It says Climate Commitment Act.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Samayo, for that introduction. Very briefly, the Climate Commitment Act was passed in 2023, and it establishes a cap and trade program in Washington state. And that means that the Department of Ecology sets limits on the amount of pollution that can be emitted, and then it sells extra allowances for pollution that will reduce over time. And so as a part of the Climate Commitment Act, Section 3, the Department of Ecology is undergoing a rulemaking process that they really want community feedback from. And that's part of the reason why we're hosting this webinar today, to get folks to understand what the rulemaking process is, and also how to get engaged and what all of this means. So the Climate Commitment Act Section 3 directed ecology to achieve reductions in criteria air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in overburdened communities. And there are three main things that it set out to do. And since its passing, the Department of Ecology has done 1 and 2 that you see on the slides here. And I do apologize that they're all in English. So it set out to identify overburdened communities in Washington, and they have done that since the passing. So this map is the 16 overburdened communities in Washington that are highly impacted by air pollution. And you'll see here, number 9, is South Seattle. And that includes the Duwamish Valley, South Park, Georgetown, Beacon Hill. And then also they want to deploy air monitoring networks in overburdened communities and analyze and determine which are the greatest sources of pollution in overburdened communities. So right now they are working on number 2 to deploy air monitoring networks in overburdened communities. So Section 3, which is number 3 here, is what we're discussing today. So now that we understand the law and what has already been done, let's talk about the rulemaking process. So a rulemaking is the way that an agency, in this case, the Department of Ecology, carves a path to implement laws. So basically, ecology is figuring out how they want to implement Section 3 of the Climate Commitment Act, because the law asks them to do quite a few things and they have to figure out how they do that. And they are hosting a quite extensive public process to gather feedback on what community wants the rulemaking to look like. So Section 3 identifies ecology to identify high emitters of air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. Every 2 years, review air pollution in the state and in overburdened communities and potentially identify other overburdened communities beyond the 16. Establish air quality targets to achieve either the national ambient air quality standards or air quality experienced in a neighboring community, whichever is more protective of health, and achieve reduction in air quality targets through the adoption of emission control strategies. And this is not like a full list of everything that Section 3 asks ecology to do, but it's a lot of what ecology wants your feedback on how to shape what this rule and what the law should look like. And I'll go ahead and stop there and see if there are any questions on Section 3. Yeah, so what is an example of an emission control strategy? That's a good question. For example, in California and in Washington, we have clean car rule or clean truck rules, and that mandates a certain percentage of new cars being sold have to meet help regulate that pollution that's going through the car or be electric. So that would be a strategy that could be used, is implementing more stringent phase out of certain cars. But there really is no limit on what ecology would like to hear on in terms of strategy. Some of the things that DRCC really talks about is the edits with or the issues with the permitting process in Washington right now, and how it doesn't allow for a cumulative analysis of what's going on in a community. And so that's something that we'll definitely be asking for in this rulemaking, is how can ecology take high polluting emitters and ask them to do cumulative analysis when they're talking about air pollution in the area. I see another question. Yes, let me share my screen again so we can see the map of the 16 overburdened communities.
And just to clarify, this map is because this is based off of what you guys were describing earlier, right? Which is using their more sporadic regional monitors. Is that correct?
That is correct. So yeah, this was done with the existing monitoring network that ecology and the regional air authorities have. So definitely not comprehensive, which is why those every 2 year looking at the data again is really important. Yeah.
And so I'll go back to sharing my screen, and thank you, Mia, for discussing more about that rulemaking process and explaining more in depth. So tying this into what our suggestions for Department of Ecology would be. So one suggestion that we have is that right now, kind of increasing and expanding funding to community-based air quality monitoring in these areas. And as I explained kind of earlier about the importance of community-based air quality monitoring by equipping local organizations with low-cost portable sensors, we can get a much clearer picture of pollution levels in specific neighborhoods rather than just relying on regional monitors that miss the local hotspots. Our next suggestion would be making air quality reports. And so right now, many people in overburning communities do not have easy access to the air quality data that affects their health. And so by creating a easy to use website for air quality reports, one that's more available in multiple languages and accessible formats. It can make sure that many people have access to these resources and access to the information they need. The next suggestion that we would have is addressing the issue. The next suggestion that we would have for ecology is that they need to address the issue of data discrepancies, especially considering how there is a gap between pollution data, the way it's collected and verified, particularly when it comes to overburdened communities. And so that is and this pollution data that is used is often used to shape policy that comes from monitors that are not representative of areas that are most affected by solution. So our suggestion of having more of a more inclusive and more having data that is collected and verified and really does reflect the communities that are most impacted. So I will be discussing just a few of the questions that we'll be asking Department of Ecology and kind of just hoping that you guys will be joining us for this meeting that's happening. Our first question will be, how will Department of Ecology make biannual air quality reports more accessible, and what systems will be in place to ensure community feedback directly influences these policy adjustments? And so the reason why this is a really important question to ask is that access to information is important. And when we know the state of our air quality, we can take informed decisions. So the focus of this question is accessibility and making sure that people have not only are able to receive the information, but also are included in the feedback process. Our next set of questions would be what specific initiatives or funding is being directed towards expanding community-based air quality monitoring in Duwamish Valley and Lake City, and how can community members be involved? As I explained a bit in this workshop, community-based air quality monitoring empowers us. And so by having that localized information that really does reflect the air quality of the communities most impacted, it can really be represented. It can be more, the data can be more representative of these communities. And then our final set of our next question would be, what new air quality regulations is the department considering, and when can stricter emissions limits be expected in overburdened communities? And the reason why this is really important is that stricter regulations are essential for long-term improvements in our environment and health. So knowing what regulatory changes are on the horizon can help us anticipate and advocate for more effective pollution controls. So I'll take a quick break and then this is like our closing for this workshop, but is there any questions about this? I don't see any questions in the chat. And so I'll continue on, but kind of wrapping up today's sessions, I want to leave you with a clear message. Oh, sorry. Oh, Ashley.
I was just saying, how can we make sure that we can attend the meeting that you're talking about? Is there a process to be involved, or is it going to be like live in person?
So Department of Ecology will be hosting 2 meetings, and we'll be sending this along with the presentation material, with what times those meetings are. But yeah, these are very accessible to the public, and kind of the point of this workshop is also to kind of get more people to be involved in the meeting, and also just disseminating that information that this meeting is happening. So yeah, I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and I think you have a slide on this too, Sumaya, right? The time and date. Do you want to go there?
No, that isn't.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I don't have it, but we can send it including with the material that we have today for people to be able to get
Can
that
you
information.
clarify that time real quick? I think you have it.
Me? Yes, there is a meeting at 6 p.m. on Thursday on Zoom. And then there's also a meeting at 9 a.m. on Zoom on Thursday morning. Yes. And I'm going to drop them actually in the chat right now, so you have quick access.
Thank you, Mia. And so the message I just want to leave is that your voice is very important, and the decision made by the Department of Ecology directly shapes funding and policies that impact air pollution regulations. So when you participate, you can ensure that real world impacts of air pollution, especially in communities like South Seattle and Mattawa and Yakima, are heard loud and clear by those making the rules. So please join us for that Washington Ecology meeting. And yeah, and so your participation could drive the change we need for cleaner and healthier community. And I really just want to say thank you for being here and taking the time to listen to this workshop. And yeah. So this is just like Q&A time, but also yeah, just our call to action and just making sure to attend the Washington Department Ecology meeting happening this Thursday.
Are your guys' teams going to be at both, or is there one that you want us to all kind of storm at?
Sorry.
Oh, Mia, you can go first.
I'll be at the one at 9 a.m., but I would say presence wherever you have the time to make it is really important. And I think that ecology, in my opinion, has done a really good job being really open about what this rulemaking can be. And so I think that any feedback that you have to share, anything, any way that you see in your community that this rulemaking should look like, whether that be permitting, local, like air monitoring, if that should be anything that you think to reduce air pollution in your community, coming to this meeting and talking about that is really important. And ecology wants to hear directly from you.
And I'll be joining that. Oh, let me go back. But I'll be joining the afternoon meeting. But like Mia said, just joining wherever you can would be the most helpful for us. I see a question. What will be the best way to also bring PISCA to interact more with ecology and provide more data results? That is a great question, Paulina. And that is something that I know DRCC does work with PISCA. And I'll leave that Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. And so I'll leave that to Joseph, but I know they are doing some work with them, and that, yeah.
Y'all answered, I guess, this question, but I think that's a good recommendation that we could provide. Again, if you're present on Thursday, that's something that we could say, like, we want Puget Sound Clean Air Agency to be involved with this, and be one of the people that is maybe like actually like providing some of these like more accessible dashboards, or like more work on like identifying these 16 overburdened communities and what work is being done. I really think PISCA could take probably some lead on that, on some of this, like how are these 16 overburdened communities doing? Yeah, so I think that's a good recommendation we could potentially provide to ecology then. Because from I understand, yeah. La pregunta otra vez en español, ¿de qué manera podemos hacer que nuestra agencia reguladora, que se llama Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, cómo esta agencia puede trabajar con la agencia de ecología para que nosotros tengamos acceso a datos? Y, o sea, yo digo que esta puede ser una recomendación para nosotros, o sea, es algo que nosotros podemos pedirle al Departamento de Ecología este jueves. Otra vez, todos los que vayan este jueves, podemos pedirles lo que querramos. Y esta es una cosa que podemos pedirles. Queremos que la agencia reguladora, que es Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, trabaje con la ecología para darnos estos datos de forma accesible, y también darnos como que reportes de cómo está nuestra comunidad cómo está en este momento. Hay esta ley, pero, o sea, ¿qué está pasando con esta ley? Algo que quizás la agencia puede hacer. Y podemos pedirle a Ecología que haga eso, que trabaje con Puget Sound Clean Air Agency para hacerlo. So, es una recomendación, su mayoría dio varias, pero es otra que podemos pedir. Not sure if that answers your question. Okay.
I see Jerry also left a question. Is there coordination with groups in Yakima Valley who represent and organize residents in those overburdened communities that also do not have monitoring that's actually in their communities or the worst portions of their communities? Can we encourage them to join Thursday, even though online meetings are not the best for participation from communities?
What I would say in response to that question is DRCC has some relationships with groups in Yakima Valley, and we're working with one of those groups on an informal public comment that we're going to be submitting to the Department of Ecology. And we can definitely reach out to them and encourage them to come to this meeting. And then the other piece that I wanted to say is that this public process goes from now until they've said winter 2025. And so this isn't the only opportunity for public participation. There are already two other meetings on the books for later in the year. And we can also mobilize folks, again, host another one of these workshops to help folks understand what the rulemaking is and stuff like that. And then Clarissa, to your question about other ways to support, you can submit informal comments to the Department of Ecology, or formal comments once the comment period opens after this public participatory process happens on the rulemaking. Winter 2025 is the cutoff, but we don't have a date yet. And I think that's because ecology wants to leave it kind of open, but winter 2025 is probably the cutoff. And I would say that's going to be probably October or November.
Is there any more questions in general about this presentation, or questions that you guys feel like you're still wondering about? I know in this presentation, there was a lot of heavy topics that were discussed in length, and there is a lot of technical terms, so like clarification needed for any of those, yeah.
I was just gonna say, we might want to let them know at the public comment or whatever it is that's happening on Thursday that they need to have consistent language for the community, because it just says, like, I see the winter 2025 that was just mentioned on like the header for their website, but if you actually click the form that they have for community members, it lists the timeline as August 31st, which is definitely not winter time, that's summer. So just like wanting them to have consistent messaging for us would probably be good feedback for them.
Ashley, is that for the like form?
Yeah, it's for the form that's listed for air quality.
I think the form is going to be a bit different than the public comment period. So I think that there will be even more time than August. But definitely fill out the form if you want to also.
I think we just need to get clarification, I think, from them, because sometimes that's one of the ways that they take written comment in ecology, but like once the deadline is cut, like they don't accept any more written comments. That's been their processes for other things I've attended, not specifically for this, but
Yeah. That's all I have for this workshop. Most of it just trying to touch base on what community-based air quality monitoring is. Joseph and Mia, if you guys have anything else to add on to this, that would be great. But I really hope to see you guys at this Washington Department of Ecology meeting. and having your guys' voices there would be very empowering.
I just want to say thank you all so much for spending 6 to 7 p.m. with us on a Tuesday evening. We appreciate your time and your interest in air quality in your community. It means a lot and it's really important. And so glad to see you all here today. There's one more question that I think is typing.
Thank you guys. And Joseph, is there anything else? Or is that?
Sorry, should I just ask it out loud? I was trying to type it.
No, it's okay. You can ask it out loud.
I was gonna say, I know you mentioned if there, so I was looking at that map that we showed that has like whatever the 13, 16 communities on it. And we've
Mhm.
only mentioned a couple of them, you know, like maybe 4, and there's a lot more on there. So is there any like way that we can apply collectively to the grant to like meet together and organize? Cause like you know, so we can actually support like building a network that is more than just our niche communities. Like obviously there's local needs, but like if we can like all use the same monitors, or if there's like a way that we can share strategies with each other, like is that in the works, or is that something that we can, that $10 million grant? I mean, I don't know if it's available still, just like trying to figure out ways where we can actually stay connected.
Yeah, I can answer that a little bit, and Mia and Joseph and you guys can join in if you guys feel whenever you guys feel like it. But for the reason, like kind of touching base as to why mostly the communities I mentioned were discussed was because with this project that I've been doing, most of my sites that I've worked with were DRCC, South Seattle, and Lake City. However, there like on the overburdened communities, there is like much more than that. And so we do really want to establish a network and try to make sure those communities are also involved. But for the project, these sites were the ones that I was working with that already had community-based air quality monitoring data, and trying to kind of correlating that with research that's already been done with community-based air quality monitoring. But those ones are communities that we also want to be included as well into this work. And so, yeah, to that point about like, what are the, trying to get those communities and networking to them, it's something that we can also aim for, but yeah.
I would just say, Ashley, to your question about the grant, from my understanding, the grant is closed and they're no longer accepting applications. It was sort of a weird grant where they only awarded funding between February and June of 2025 because they had to get the legislature to approve the funding again for this budget, this 2-year budget. And so I'm not sure if they're going to reopen it. If they didn't, yeah, it was super sad. If they're going to reopen it, if they get an extension, right? So there's that caveat, but I think the grant is closed. On that note, though, DRCC, in collaboration with Earth Justice, 350 Tacoma, Communities for Healthy Bay in Tacoma, Friends of Toppenish Creek, and another Yakima local org, we're all submitting formal comments. We've been drafting them for the past 2 months. They're really comprehensive and take a lot of things into account. So I just want to say, like, we are working collaboratively with other communities that are identified.
And then Jerry, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mia, for that. And I just want to say one of the things that I was personally very disappointed in, I know others, was that ecology did not include any excluded from the scope of grants, community-based air monitoring. And one of the things to comment on now is that if they reopen the grant cycle, they should definitely include that community-based air monitoring that was just being discussed. They've not given me an answer that's meaningful as to why they excluded monitoring So I think it's important to keep raising this. And wonderful workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I really appreciated the colorful slides. Thank you.